Hi, and welcome to the I Teed Myself podcast. My name is Matthew Miniman, and this is episode 56. What can basic math teach us about email filtration? So, way back in episode 37, what can dog care teach us about spam? I talked a bit about emails and spam and how they are filtered. And this episode is entirely focused on email filtration. So, there'll probably be a little bit of overlap, but basically, we're going to be discussing just email filtration, both are on both sides of it. How emails get filtered getting to you, and how emails get filtered when you send them. But basic math. So basic math is basic math. 1 + 1 = 2. Unless you're a crazy person, then it equals 3. Or an exceptionally intelligent mathematician because you want to prove the world wrong. Anyway, basic math is extremely basic. It's simple. That's why it's called basic, I guess. So 1 + 1 = 2, 1 × 1 = 1. You know, those sorts of rules. That it has a constant. There are very basic settings. It's very predictable. You don't have to do a whole lot of thinking to process it. You know, unless you're 3 years old. But if you have done any basic level of education, you can pretty much do all basic math in your head. And it's extremely simple to do. There's no tricks. There's no really hard questions that can be asked. I mean, order of operations is always a bitch, but I don't think we'll end up needing to worry about that in this. Fuck order of operations. First, opposite, last, whatever. So, in the world of email filtration, we have a lot of different settings that we go through to analyze every email. And what we look at are a lot of different things. And those items include things like sender policy framework, domain keys identified mail, domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance, domain reputation, rapidity of email sent, cardinality of subject, message length, internal links, attachments, number of recipients, and hash matching of messages. So I actually typed up that list. So this is a unique opportunity for me to actually follow some sort of tiny little script. Normally I just speak rapidly out of my brain for most of this. So anyways, with these various pieces of information, email filtration, email filters will use these pieces of information to basically add the level of block, and once it reaches a certain point, that's when it blocks. So essentially, it's all of these different factors, A plus B, and if it is greater than whatever the block level is, C, then the email is blocked. And C can have some interesting impacts as well. You can actually have interesting impacts on C yourself as a user. For most email filters or most spam filters or whatever you want to call them, you as a user can basically have an impact into how tightly it controls the emails that it sends you by marking things as spam, by increasing decreasing its tolerance level or increasing it. You can affect this number C a whole lot. So that C is based on a lot of different factors, and just know that C can be user dependent. And that is a really hard lesson for a lot of people to understand, because if you're like, I want to see every email every time, but then you start marking things as junk, that's going to affect your ability to see things. And there are probably going to be more factors into email filtration than the one I've listed, but these are the big ones. These are the primary ones that we see, and really the ones that you as a user can have an impact with. If you're sending out emails that end up getting blocked a lot, you can kind of look at this and understand what you're doing a little better. So let's go through this list of items. First, we're going to go through Sender Policy Framework, or SPF. It's not sunscreen. Sender Policy Framework is a concept that basically just lists where email is allowed to be sent from for specific organizations. So this list basically, it's just a list that goes inside of your domain registrar. It's a text record that tells everybody else on the planet what email servers are allowed to send as your domain. So if you list things like, if you list your email server, such as, Outlook or Proofpoint or Mimecast, those servers will be allowed to send as your organization. Now, in this setting, you can also set it to a failure type where you can either pass through everything, or you can fail everything, or you can do what is called a soft fail, which basically leaves it up to the receiving organization to decide what to do with that email. When you fail SPF, meaning when an email has been sent from outside of your organization as your domain, the SPF record is supposed to be the record that everybody pays attention to. And it really does drive whether or not your email gets blocked. And this is almost very certainly a Boolean setting inside of every email filter. If SPF matches, either pass it or fail it. That's it. There's no maybe, maybe not. No, it really is just pass fail. If it is a basic email filter, it probably is just blocking this. Anyway, domain keys identified mail is the next one, or DKIM. So what DKIM is, there is no really nice way to say this, DKIM. This is basically a signature that goes along with your email or in the header of your email that validates it as an authorized email from your organization. And so the concept here is that if an email server becomes compromised or an attacker is able to spoof email from a valid server address, they can effectively send email as an organization. However, they won't be able to send the DKIM key along with the email because they won't have the proper key to generate the email with. And so then once it gets to the receiving organization, they'll check the key against what's been published publicly and be like, oh, this email doesn't match. It hasn't been signed with the appropriate certificate. So there's no fucking way that this email is valid, and that it will just fail it, which is really cool. It's a really neat way to perform email filtration. The problem here is that DKIM is also, it can be a bitch to set up, especially if you have a lot of automated emails going out. So if you do a lot of like marketing, or you have a lot of other email services that send as your domain, such as, I don't know, a weather notification system, your emails can't have a DKIM because they aren't properly, the server that's sending them isn't properly configured for DKIM, or the DKIM generation isn't available, or whatever. It can be very difficult to get DKIM set up appropriately for your organization. And so a lot of organizations that end up sending a lot of automated emails have chosen not to include DKIM, even though it is best practice. Now, that's changing here recently because organizations are waking the fuck up and they're understanding that, hey, we should stop circumventing these security controls, but the adoption is still not nearly as universal as you would believe. The other one, domain-based message authentication, reporting it in conformance, DMARC is what this is called, defines what to do with a failed SPF or DKIM record. So this actually allows an organization to be like, hey, if you receive a bullshit email from us, we want to know. And it allows them to provide an address for every other organization across the planet to send reports for when their when their domain is being spoofed. And it can also tell other organizations to, hey, maybe you want to accept an email from us if it fails. We might have fucked something up. This is basically just a backup location a back-end solution for IT organizations or IT departments to basically be like, yeah, we might have fucked it up. So you might be able to send it to us, or just, if or they can be like, oh yeah, we've got this handled. If you receive a spoofed email, send us that report so we can identify what might be going on. And so these three pieces of information combined kind of are just the pass-fail. Just like I said with SPF, these are kind of pass-fail. If an email fails one of these, or is somehow incorrect in this, it can be pretty much just be blocked, or it can be allowed through depending on what the settings say. But typically, these are what email filters and email servers honor when they're analyzing an email first. Like, this happens first. This is the first thing that goes through. Now, these can have an impact down the line, but typically the calculus of this has already occurred once it gets to the true email filtration and analytics on the recipient server. So we go domain reputation. This one is kind of an interesting concept. So domain reputation is how much do we trust this organization? This can have some impact by user. So basically, if we've told our email filter trust all emails from a specific domain, those emails, obviously, the reputation that reputation score will probably be 0, or at least 0 added to the A plus B equals C calculation that we said earlier. And that domain reputation will just sit flat if you've marked it as safe. However, if you haven't marked it as safe, the domain reputation can be analyzed in a lot of different ways. Most email filters look for newly created domains. They look for domains that are expiring soon. They look for domains that have been known to send bullshit email. But also, they look at partner organizations, and this is kind of the fuckery of email filters. Part of the way that they make money is that they partner with marketing organizations to make sure that their emails make it through. So shit like SendGrid or SurveyMonkey or, I don't know, Constant Contact, any of those other fuckers that spam you. By the way, if you didn't know, those are the fuckers that are spamming you. Those are the actual fuckers that are spamming you. They're the people who all of the organizations that they send email for are paying. These guys are paying Proofpoint and Mimecast and Microsoft money directly so that their emails can flow through, so that their domain reputation remains as low of a state, so it doesn't raise that calculation anymore. So then the next thing that it looks at, or another thing that it looks at, is called the rapidity of emails sent. And so rapidity, and I didn't say frequency for a very specific reason, because frequency it can be misconstrued. Frequency is not how many emails you send in a day or a minute. That's what frequency would be. And that's not what rapidity of emails sent means. What rapidity of emails sent is how fast do we see bulk emails coming out of this organization. So if an organization typically sends 500 emails every day, and all of a sudden they start sending 5,000 emails a second, we know that the rapidity of emails sent score has changed. And so the email filtration, what it does is it takes all of the calculation of domain, or it takes all of the emails that it's received from all domains ever, and it kind of weighs it in an analytics application to identify how fast people are sending emails and how quickly they send them out. So like what you don't want to get, what is a really good indicator of compromise, is when an organization starts sending bulk loads of emails out just all of a sudden. So when we see a compromised email account we see the attacker sit there, and if their purpose is to either gain access to other accounts, leveraging the trust, the inherent trust from this organization outward, then what we see is them sending just boatloads of emails out. And, it's so fast. It's done by a bot. So it's quick and it's not normal. And it basically just ends up being thousands and thousands of emails. And when this happens, this ticks up that calculation towards the email getting blocked. And so what we see when legitimate emails start getting blocked for this reason, we see it's because it's this person who doesn't normally do communications outwards, but they've been tasked with the project to let all of their investors know that there's a specific thing going on. And so they email 5,000 people in a matter of an hour. And they've never done that before. And so the email filter starts going, nope, fuck you. You're doing something scammy. This is weird. I'm not letting you through. And it can do that on both sides. It can do that on the recipient side. So the receivers can be like, this is a whole lot of emails that we've never seen this person ever send. So we're going to start blocking these. And it can also happen on the sender side, meaning it's called spam control. We don't want spam coming from our email servers if you haven't paid us. Fucking mob. And so what happens is the sending email server will be like, nope, you can't send these emails. It's just you're doing something weird. We don't like it. Stop it. So then the next subject that we look at, or the next item that we look at for email filtration, is the cardinality of subject. And what this means is cardinality is essentially the uniqueness of an item. How unique is this thing? Or is it the same as 1,000 other emails? So if you title your emails all the same, it becomes very weird for your email filter, because it's told that if your email subjects are all the same, that is not normal behavior, and those should be blocked. And so if you send out 5,000 emails and they all have the same subject line, but to 5,000 unique recipients, it's going to start blocking your messages, because the cardinality of that subject is really, really low. And so we're going to block those emails. Just like if you started sending test emails across multiple different organizations, this is actually what happens when in IT. So I'm going to pull back the curtain just a little bit. If you're testing an email server or testing some sort of function through email, and you just name your email test and you send that out, you might see those starting to get blocked. And that's happened to me. I'll use my personal email account at Gmail to test that email is flowing, and I'll use an email test. And so if I don't receive it, I do have to check my junk box just to make sure that they weren't flowing in there, that I didn't get it blocked because I was using test as a subject line. The next one is message length. And so what you need to understand from a perspective of users is that email filters aren't necessarily looking directly at your message content, because that's kind of illegal. You can't look at the message content. Not really. There are certain aspects of this that you can do, but most companies will not look directly at the message content. What they will look at is the metadata surrounding the message content. So they'll look at the message length, the hash of the message. They'll look at how unique the message seems to be as far as content is concerned, but it won't be necessarily identifying words inside of your email, although I'm sure it does do that. They're not supposed to. Your email messages are supposed to remain completely secret. So one of the things it looks at is message length. If your message length is either too short or too long, your message can then be considered potentially spammy or potentially blockable. And so depending on where it falls in that range of too short, too long, your calculation for C goes up. And it's really simple. Internal links. So these are any internal links that you include in your message. So this is the one thing that email filters will look at explicitly. They will look at any links that are included in emails. As an IT person, I send links out quite often. And so, all of my emails get looked at with a higher rate of suspicion because I send those links out. Every email that contains a link gets looked at a little bit more directly. And this is to identify that URL, that link, as either malicious or not. And it's interesting because if you send a malicious link through an email filter, there's a good chance that it will just simply block that link. And so what you have to do is if you're going to send a malicious link, you actually have to interpose some characters in there so that a human can remove those special characters so that the URL, the link isn't seen by the email filter, or you have to figure out some way to translate it so that the email filter doesn't look at that malicious link. We've had to do that when doing a lot of threat hunting and trying to make sure that cross communication, across teams, across different teams, trying to identify specific threats or trying to identify the source of an attack. When we communicate that out, it can be very difficult because the link can get blocked if it's malicious. But internal links are analyzed, and so they go through this analytics system to ensure that no malicious links are sent through. And there's a lot of different pieces of malicious links. I will probably do a DNS filtration episode, which will cover this a little bit more in depth, but based on the category of the website as it's registered with different filtration and reputation entities, this can cause an email to tick up on that C calculation. So the next one is attachments. Your attachments obviously have an impact on your email. If you attach malicious files, you will get blocked. And actually, Microsoft does a really good job of allowing messages to go through, but blocking the attachment. And then it will tell you, it's like, hey, we sent this email through because we thought the content was good, but the attachment was suspect. And it can tell you that and give you an opportunity to download the attachment if you feel it necessary. But like if you're sending through malicious files, EXEs, PS1 files, those can tick up your block score because those are seen as potentially malicious, even if they're not found to be malicious. And there's a lot of different ways that they scan these files to ensure that they're not malicious. One of the ways is doing a hash calculation and probably looking it up through VirusTotal, which if you don't know what VirusTotal is, it's a great resource for identifying malicious files. You can look up files by their SHA-256 hash, and it will identify it, see who has found this file to be malicious. It looks at dozens and dozens of different antivirus providers and sees who has identified it as malicious. And then there's also some community input in there. So like if a file is seen as malicious, but somebody's like, oh, no, this can be trusted because it's a false positive, that information can go in there. And VirusTotal is really good. But one of the ways they use VirusTotal, these email filters, is that if VirusTotal has never seen a file before, then it's probably unique and it could potentially be malicious, and that will tick up that C calculation. Just like if you send a file that is malicious, it'll really tick up that C calculation. Then the next thing that it will look at, or another thing it will look at, is the number of recipients. So if your email has too many recipients, meaning you're sending one email to 5,000 different people instead of 5,000 emails to one person, it does the same calculation. Like it's like, oh no, this is bullshit. You can't just send one email out to thousands and thousands of different people. This is bullshit. And so it will look at your to list, your CC list, and identify how many people you've tried to send it to. Now, an outgoing email filter will also look at your BCC list to identify how many people you're sending it out to. So don't think you're being smart by adding a BCC there. You're just getting around one email filter and not both, or an email filter on one end, not both ends. And then the last one is hash matching of messages. So, as I said before, this is one of those pieces of metadata that your email filter will look at for the message content of your email. And this hash, I mentioned SHA-256 hash for the files. The hash of your message has to be unique across your messages. And so if you send an email that has a common hash or the cardinality of that hash is very low, then there is a significant chance that your email will get blocked. So if you just send an email that says, hey, and doesn't include anything else, like it doesn't include your signature, it just says, hey, there's a good chance it'll get blocked because that email is kind of bullshit. There's probably been 100,000 different emails with that same fucking word. Hey. So when you're sending an email, make sure that you're changing it up if you're sending bulk emails. One of the things that we've seen is that with patient communications, specifically here in Colorado, and recently we had 3 days of storms here in Colorado, at which a lot of businesses shut down because it was basically like, you're getting a foot of snow today, and it's okay in the morning, but we're going to close the business, and there are still stupid people going about. So we have to alert these stupid people to our business not being opened. So there were a lot of different patient communications going out, and these were being sent by people who don't normally send a lot of emails out. And what they were doing is they were just sending a copy-pasted message to each patient with very little variance between the messages. And this is what caused that hash of those messages to match. And it started, these people started getting their emails blocked. And so, well, we couldn't shut down because, we work remote. It doesn't give snow. Fuck snow. We don't care about snow. But since they were sending out these messages and they were getting blocked, we had to respond appropriately. And so one of the ways that you can avoid this is by making sure that when you're sending out messages like this, common communications out, that you change the message up or include their fucking name in the email. Don't just send a goddamn copy-paste email. Make sure that if it is a copy-paste email, that there's a place where you can interject their first and last name so that it changes the hash of the message. So that way the email filter goes, oh, this email is different. It's a unique email. I don't have to worry about it. And it just passes it through. That C calculation remains low. So anyway, A plus B equals C. C equals block your ass. That's the basic math of email filtration. And through all of these different pieces that we've talked about, you can influence your emails being blocked. And so if you're somebody who sends a lot of emails and all of a sudden has their emails getting blocked, these are some of the things that you can look at to try to affect that and make sure that your emails don't get blocked. Well, that's all I've got time for today, guys. Have a great day.